everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Kickstarter Weekly. This week's episode is looking at games that are completing their funding between February the 20th and the 26th. Now, I'll have three campaigns that I'm talking about today: Andromeda's Edge, Witchbound, both of those are on Gamefound, and then Set a Watch, The Forsaken Isles, and Doomed Run, and that is over on Kickstarter. After that, I'll be revealing the single game that I backed personally from last week's video, the two new arrivals to my collection. One of them will also be showing up in the played games, and I have 16 played games. A lot of them are just updates of scores, games I've been playing a lot recently on Board Game Arena, so I'll be going through those very quickly. Most of them are the same. I think there are 3 or 4 that are updated, and then one of the games that's a new arrival, that'll be the first time that I'm talking about that game, so I'll talk about that one at a little more length. Now, as always in my videos, I bookmark or tab them so you can mouse over the bar and see which content you specifically want if you want to jump to something. Also, I have links down in the description to the individual campaigns. So if I'm talking about one of those 3 campaigns and it's interesting to you, you can just go down in the description, click on the link, bam, it'll take you right to that campaign so you don't have to go hunting for it on your own. Currently, the best way to support this channel is to like and subscribe, so thank you very much for doing that. There's a lot of growth planned for this channel in the next year, and even in the next few months, including relaunch, teach, and review videos with better equipment, so they'll look better. Videos that do deep dives into mechanics and strategy for various games. I'll be live streaming games with a focus on mostly solo games and cooperative games like dungeon crawlers, but some heavy Euros as well. And I'll also be launching a Patreon. So subscribing now will keep you abreast of the future changes when they hit. And when I start to publish videos beyond these Kickstarter weeklies, which come out once a week over the weekend for campaigns that are completing their funding the following week, you'll also know when those series get launched. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Let's get started on the 3 campaigns that I'm looking at this week. First game of the week is Andromeda's Edge, which is over on Gamefound. It's going to complete its funding on Thursday, February the 23rd. This one had a funding goal of $80,000, and they're at $1.3 million. So this is a huge game, one of the big funds of this year so far, and that gives them a multiplier of 16 times. That means this is the largest campaign in overall dollars, and also the largest campaign in terms of how they're doing versus their funding goal. Now, Andromeda's Edge is a game for 1 to 5 players, plays in about 45 minutes to 3.5 hours, so there's kind of a big range there, and games can go fairly long at the higher player counts. The complexity on the game is heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium-low. Now, this is a worker placement game that has area majority and hand management. It's very similar to Dwellings of Eldervale. People are calling it Dwellings in Space, and it's by the same designer, although this time out, his son is a co-designer. But same people involved creatively for the most part. One of the big differences, however, is a shift in publishers. So when Dwellings of Eldervale launched its Kickstarter campaign, it was done through a company called Breaking Games, and one of the lead people there was Peter Vaughn, although he does not own the company. But he ran a lot of the Kickstarter campaigns and did an amazing job. Peter is a guru of campaigns. Everything that he helps to produce is so well done. He did Flamecraft fairly recently, and that, like this one, is through Cardboard Alchemy, which is now his company. So he left Breaking Games to found Cardboard Alchemy, to co-found Cardboard Alchemy. Now, Peter was not the owner at Breaking Games, and one thing that I noticed is that the fulfillment of Dwellings of Eldervale, some of the things that happened later with people trying to get components, the reprintings, they were not handled that well. And in my opinion, Breaking Games is not the best publisher. They have some problems. And my guess is that Peter not calling the shots at breaking games, wanted to start his own company where things like that wouldn't happen. So I think if you were one of those people that had any kind of problems obtaining Dwellings of Eldervale, obtaining like extra pieces like the wooden tokens or things like that, you should be able to pledge with confidence and know that Cardboard Alchemy will not have those same problems. Peter Vaughn is in charge at Cardboard Alchemy, and he's very on top of things like that. So I think the support that you're going to see for Andromeda's Edge is going to be far better than what happened with Dwellings of Eldervale. And considering that Andromeda's Edge is kind of Dwellings in space, if anyone's still on the fence, you may want to forgo Dwellings, just give up that ghost, get this version of the game, and like I said, I think support is going to be better over time, both in terms of sequels and what may happen with the game, but also just in terms of the handling of spare parts, dealing with their customer base, things like that. Because Peter is now in charge at Cardboard Alchemy, and he's the best. So the designer here, one of the two designers, is Luke Laurie. He was the sole designer of Dwellings of Eldervale. He is a co-designer here. He is best known for Dwellings of Eldervale, the Manhattan Project, Energy Empire, and Whistle Mountain. And he's joined this time out by his son, who is also a co-designer, Maximus Laurie. The artist is Sergio Chavez. He was one of the artists on Dwellings. He is the sole artist here, except for a little extra art that Sandra Tang from Flamecraft has done for a couple factions and things like that. But in general, Sergio Chavez is the sole artist on Andromeda's Edge, and he's best known for Dwellings of Eldervale, Rise of Tribes, which was another game done previously at Breaking Games, and Sansuchi. And this is being published by Cardboard Alchemy. Previously, they've done Flamecraft, which I think also is a testament to Peter Vaughn as a producer and a publisher. Has the same level of components and production and high standards, as well as Mission Catastrophe. Now, there are essentially 3 different pledge levels for this campaign. However, there's also a pledge level for the deluxe upgrade kit. No one should really need that, because you should either be pledging for the standard version of the game or the deluxe version of the game, which basically includes that upgrade kit. I think the reason for them including it here is just to set it up as a thing, to give it an SKU, because in the future, it will then exist, and people who, let's say if someone pledges for the standard version of the game now and they want to get the upgrade kit later, they'll be able to do that. So I think they've just included it here as its own thing, just to kind of be consistent. But if you're pledging for either version of the game, you shouldn't need the upgrade kit at this point in time, right? You should just, if you want the upgrade kit, just get the deluxe version of the game. So for $69, you can pledge the standard edition of the game. It will also come with the Escalation expansion. So that is an expansion that's going to come with every pledge level in this Kickstarter campaign. For $129, you can pledge for the deluxe edition, and that will basically be the standard edition and the deluxe upgrade kit all in one. The upgrades that you'll get with that will be upgraded resources, metal coins, a game tray system of storage trays, building miniatures, and raider miniatures. Now, in its own pledge level is the deluxe upgrade kit for $69. That will include those items. And so people in the future, if they're finding this later, or they're going through the publisher's website, or if they're out there in the wild, that will include those items, and getting those things will upgrade your standard edition to the deluxe edition. Now, for $189, you can pledge for the all-in. That is essentially a $60 upgrade from the deluxe, so it's $60 more. And I find that when I'm pledging things like this, oftentimes I look at what's available in the all-in, and I don't want everything. I just want some of the things. But because they usually give you pretty good deals on all-ins, once I've kind of gone through and line itemed out what the gameplay items are, the things that kind of directly affect gameplay, the things that I really want, usually I'm already over that price difference. And so it's actually cheaper just to get the all-in and get the extra things. And then I can give them away to friends, or sell them off if I don't want them. But a lot of the kind of little extras are really just bonuses that you're already getting if you're getting the all-in. So all of these items that I'm mentioning are also available as add-ons. If you wanted to pick and choose them, you could just get them individually as add-ons. I'm going to go through these. I'm going to list their prices as I talk about them, but just know that everything that I'm talking about is included in the all-in. So if, like me, you're looking at these things and the things that you want are, $60 or more, it's going to be cheaper for you just to get the all-in. The first item here is a wash on the miniatures. That's $30 for the miniatures wash. For $20, you can get the upgraded wooden moon tokens. I'm kind of likening this to the wooden tokens in Dwellings of Eldervale because it's not included in the deluxe version of the game, but it is the kind of last remaining resource upgrade, and it's upgrading tokens from cardboard to wood, much like those tokens in Dwellings of Eldervale. So that's $20. So that puts us at 50 right there. Then there are 2 additional factions that you can get, that you can play as, and they're each $5. So if you wanted all that stuff, the miniature wash, the upgraded tokens, and the 2 factions, that's going to put you right at $60, which is the difference between the deluxe and the all-in. So the first of those factions is called the Astro Knights faction. It's going to come with a new card for that faction and a ship. So you'll be getting the standee and the miniature version of that ship. Also as an add-on, you can get the Dracarinen Flamekeepers faction, $5. That will also include the faction card and the ship upgrades. And the art for this one is by Sandra Tang, who did Flamecraft. It's sort of a shout out, an homage to the dragons from Flamecraft and the art style of that game. So that would put you right up at 60. That would make up the difference between the deluxe and the all-in. But these remaining items will also be included in the all-in, and I'll also be telling you what the prices are if you wanted to include these as add-ons individually. For $9, there's a module expansion pack. This is essentially 48 more tiles that you can put into the game for increased variability. For $10, there's the Ancient Brain Reader, standee and a miniature and a card. This is something that players will be able to interact with in the game in the galaxy. It is $10 as an add-on, but if you did any of the puzzles in the game, if you succeeded at any of the puzzles in the campaign, you'll get this for free. Now, if you're already doing the all-in, you'd be getting this anyway. And so instead of that freebie, they're going to give you, I think it's $10 off of shipping. I think it was originally $5 off of shipping, but they've increased that to a $10 discount on shipping. That way people who are getting the all-in and are already getting this through the all-in will still get that $10 savings. For $18, you can add on a card sleeve set that will sleeve all of the cards in the game. For $20, you can add on 5 neoprene dice trays. For $2, you can add on a pair of drink coasters with moon art on them. And for $4, you can add on these jumbo marbled raider dice that you'll be using in the game. So those are the prices for those things as add-ons, but again, all of those things will come in the all-in. So you may want enough add-ons individually that'll already take you over that $60 price increase, in which case you're probably just better off getting the all-in. In the continental US, the shipping estimates are $22, $25, and $28. That's for the standard, deluxe, and all-in. And Cardboard Alchemy is planning on delivering Andromeda's Edge in June of 2024. We'll be sticking around Gamefound for a game called Witchbound, which is also going to complete its funding on Thursday, February the 23rd. This one had a funding goal of $15,000. They're currently at $128,000, which is 8.5 times that funding goal. Now, this is a one-player game. Sessions generally play in about 30 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game is light, and I'm going to have to set the risk associated with this campaign at high because it's a new publisher, first-time designer, stuff like that. This is an open-world, story-based game with puzzles, branching narratives. It's got illustrated cutscenes. It has narrative choice / paragraph as a central mechanic. Some of the puzzles and gameplay functions off of pattern recognition. And again, this is a solo solitaire game. Not that you maybe couldn't play it with a friend, but you're going to be playing it cooperatively as if you were one person. So it is a solo solitaire game. The designer here is Thatcher Cohen. I don't see any credited artists I believe that's because the artist is also Thatcher Cohen, but I'm not 100% on that. And the publisher is Dark Doll Games, and my belief is that that is also Thatcher Cohen's company, that this is kind of a one-person operation where they're doing both the design and the art, and they're also the publisher. Pledging this one is a rather simple affair. You're either going to pledge $40, a pledge called Basic Witch, which will get you the game and the stretch goals, or you're going to pledge $80, which is Devout Witch, and that will get you 5 additional things, which are also available as add-ons. So I'll do what I did with Andromeda's Edge, where I'll go through the pricing of those things. Just know that these are all included in the Devout Witch pledge. There are a few more pledge levels. I generally don't talk about those kinds of pledge levels. There's one for retailers, which is sort of a deposit for multiple copies of the game. And then there are 2 much higher level pledge levels where you get to design certain things in the game, like an NPC or a market stall or things like that. Usually in a lot of campaigns, those are limited to just a few items. And so I usually don't cover those, because if there are only 3 of them, it doesn't apply to most people. Even so, I don't see limits like that on this campaign, but even so, I tend to not cover those pledge levels because it is so specific. And I call those kinds of rewards vanity rewards. Often they include things like your face on a card in the game. So it doesn't really affect gameplay. You're not getting anything more for the game in terms of gameplay. It's just a little extra that is very highly personalized for you. And in this case, as I said, those 2 pledge levels include you getting to design an NPC in the game and you getting to design a market stall in the game. Now, sometimes that is only included in your copy of the game. Sometimes those additions go wide throughout the entire production of the game. Usually when that happens, there's a limit, because they'll have, let's say, like 10 NPCs that they're going to add in, so they'll only have 10 copies of that, and then once that fills out, they'll create those NPCs and they'll be in all of the copies of the game. So for $15, you can add on the Journal of Jotting set. That is basically a special notebook for you to keep track of the game, the puzzles, your progress, what you're doing. But it's just this extra journal for you to kind of track what's happening in the game and your progress. And that is available for $15 as an add-on. It also comes with the Devout Witch pledge. For $5, you can add on the upgraded Witchwood tokens. It will give you wooden tokens. For $20, you can add on the Side Stories Season 1 Pass. That's going to give you 14 more hours of gameplay, little extra quests. Now, if you were adding on things, that would put you up at the same amount going from Basic to Devout Witch. So you've already added on $40 of things, which means if you're pledging Devout Witch, the remaining items are things that you would essentially be getting for free when you're pledging Devout Witch. That includes, for $20, you can add on the Coven Cove Compendium. This is sort of an atlas kind of a thing that has lore, art of the game, different stuff like that. It's a big book with all of these different entries, sketches, stuff like that collected into one little volume. And finally, for $10, you can add on the Conjurer's Coloring Book, which is a coloring book with the art of the game. So again, if you were getting Devout Witch, those last 2 items are basically included for free over the cost of the other add-ons. What I'm trying to say here is that if you want all of these add-ons, don't add them on. Just get the Devout Witch. You're essentially getting $70 worth of add-ons for a $40 increase from the basic pledge. And that's true of Andromeda's Edge as well. You get quite a bit of savings if you're getting the all-in versus adding on everything. Now, in the continental US, shipping for Witchbound has been estimated at $16 and $19, and Dark Doll Games is planning on delivering Witchbound in February of 2024. Our third and final campaign of the week takes us to Kickstarter for the first time of this video. It's for a game called Set a Watch, The Forsaken Isles plus Doomed Run. This campaign is going to complete its funding on Friday, February the 24th. It has a funding goal of $40,000. They're currently at $223,000, which is 5.5 times greater than their funding goal. It's a game for 1 to 4 players. Sessions usually take about 60 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium low. So the Set a Watch series are card games that use dice rolling and variable player powers. What's happening thematically is that you've got a group of adventurers at a campfire at night, and you're sort of besieged by monsters. You're trying to fight off all of these monsters attacking your campfire. I suppose in that sense, it's kind of a tower defense game, really. Now, there's been the original base game, and then they did a sequel, Swords of the Coin, and now they have this third iteration, The Forsaken Isles. All of them can be played separately, so they're standalone games, but you can also use them as expansions and put them together. Doomed Run, which is also part of this campaign, this funding campaign, is a campaign game. It makes Set a Watch into a campaign game. Now, these games can be played cooperatively or solo. And in the past, the original Set a Watch was co-designed, I think, by Mike Nade, who is the operator and publisher Rock Manor Games. That's his company. He is no longer involved as a designer with this latest version of the game, although I believe he is still a developer. But the designer for Forsaken Isles is Todd Walsh, and he's previously worked on both the original Set a Watch and Set a Watch Swords of the Coin. The artists include Mark Grunert, Rodolfo Langhi, who worked on Set a Watch Swords of the Coin, Rostislav, Andreas Rocha, who worked on the original Set a Watch, also Monumental, and a game called Sansuchi. Spec, Boris Stanisek, who worked on Merchants of Magic, a Set a Watch Tale, as well as Set a Watch Swords of the Coin, and Bruno Schwartz. And the game's being published by Rock Manor Games, who are probably best known for Lawyer Up, Maximum Apocalypse, and the Set a Watch series. There's 4 different pledge levels and then some add-ons. The first one is $32. It's for Set a Watch Forsaken Isles. That's going to include this new version of the game. It has new adventurers that you're going to be playing as, new monsters, new challenges. The locations will have a tropical theme to them. And again, this can be played either standalone by itself, so you don't necessarily need anything else. You can just try the Set a Watch series just with this by itself, or you can use it as an expansion in conjunction with the other games. If you pledge at the $76 Cult of the New pledge level, you'll also be getting Doomed Run, and that is a replayable campaign that you can use with all of the content for Set a Watch. You also get a big box, so you can store everything together. For $96, you can pledge the standalone trilogy. That will give you all 3 games in the series, including the newest one, Forsaken Isles, but you won't be getting Doomed Run. For $159, which is the all-in bundle, you will again get all 3 games in the series, but then you'll also get Doomed Run and the big box. You'll get a cloth mat. You'll get the Outriders expansion. That's a smaller expansion that includes 34 extra creatures, 6 unhallowed, and introduces the rider mechanic to Set a Watch. And then finally, you'll get metal coins. Now, if you want to get some of those items as add-ons, you'd rather do it that way, you can add on any of the 3 games as an add-on for $32. So Set a Watch, $32, Set a Watch Swords of the Coin, $32, and Set a Watch The Forsaken Isles, $32. You can add on the Outriders expansion for $10. Also for $10, you can get the cloth playmat, and then finally for $12, you can add on those metal coins which come with a pouch to keep them in. Now, depending which of the 4 pledge levels you're pledging, in the continental US, your estimated shipping is $8, $12, $15, or $18, and Rock Manor Games is planning on delivering Set a Watch, this new iteration, in February 2024. So that wraps the 3 campaigns that I wanted to profile and bring your attention to this week. If any of them strike your fancy, if you want to know more or pledge them, you can just go down into the description of the video, click on the link, and it'll take you right there. The first 2 campaigns, Andromeda's Edge and Witchbound, are on Gamefound. Set a Watch is on Kickstarter. But if you use the links, you don't even need to know that. Let's move forward, and I will reveal which of the campaigns from last week I personally backed. So that was Hero Realms Dungeons. This is a deck builder game. I have all of the stuff previously. I thought I'd get the new stuff. It's something I'll probably play with Kristen, my wife. She likes it a lot. My one caveat with Hero Realms is that there's not a lot of content. So there's kind of some campaign, story content to it, but it's what you might get in something like Arkham Horror the card game versus from like the base box and maybe one larger expansion. But the production on Hero Realms in general as an IP is really high. It's well produced, it's really well designed, the card art's great, everything about it is really well done. I do think the people that are going to benefit the most from owning Hero Realms are people who do want to play through the campaign content cooperatively, but who also want to play PvP, play against each other. That's something that I don't really have that much interest in. I'm not a huge PvP player, and I think at times if I want to play PvP style games, I'll probably go for more like Dice Throne or Unmatched or something like that. So for me, even though I'm pledging Hero Realms and I'm anticipating playing through the campaign stuff with Kristen, I think it's something that we'll probably do and then eventually sell, just because I don't think we need to have it for the long haul, and as well produced as the game is, it's not something I'm probably going to be replaying a lot. But it's so well done that it's something I wanted to have, you know, our time with and be able to play through, and it's something I think I'd like to play and stream. It's pretty easy to teach and pick up, and so it'd be something I think would be fun to follow along with. And because the price tag on it is kind of high, that way people who have been curious about it can at least kind of get the experience as a viewer without pledging it themselves. I have two new acquisitions for this period. They came together even though they were two separate campaigns because global shipping is crazy and publishers are trying to give themselves a bit of a break. And so I've seen this with a couple other publishers where they're combining the shipping on multiple campaigns, which means in some cases that one campaign is shipping a little bit later because it's having to wait for the other campaign, and then, you know, they're just putting them all in the same boxes and things and shipping them together and saving a little money. So for me, the two games that showed up were the latest expansion for Aeon's End. It's called Past and Future, and that came with Astro Knights. Now, I'm actually going to be talking about Astro Knights coming up in the played game section because I did play it last night. I got a first play in, and I'm going to tell you all what I think, especially how it fits in the world where Aeon's End already exists, but because it's kind of a reskinning of Aeon's End, sort of a space reskin. So let's just head over to that section and I'll talk about that. So I've got 16 different games in the played section this week. Most of these are just going to be upgraded scores, and only a few of them have moved. So the first is Seven Wonders Duel, and I'm actually downgrading my score down to a 6.5. I kind of think that Seven Wonders Duel has a little bit more going on than Seven Wonders, because in Seven Wonders, that's a multiplayer game. You're getting these cards kind of passed by you every round, and each turn, you're choosing which card to buy or add to your tableau. And there's not as much decision making, I think, in Seven Wonders as there is in Seven Wonders Duel, which is a two-player version, but you're working with a tableau. You can see some of the cards that are coming up in the tableau. Some of them are face down, some of them are face up. So it does create more of a decision-making process. There are a couple expansions for Seven Wonders Duel, Gora and Pantheon. I like one of them more than the other. I don't really love either one, and I don't know. The more I play the base game even, the less I'm enjoying it. So I'm downgrading my Seven Wonders Duel score to a 6.5. Just know that score largely is a me score and reflects my personal opinion on the game, my personal enjoyment, or kind of lack thereof. But a lot of people really like Seven Wonders Duel. Most people rate it much higher, so my rating of a 6.5 is kind of on the low end, just to be aware. Okay, Astro Knights. So this is the one new game that I'll be talking about this video, and this is from the Kickstarter that just delivered. Astro Knights is a space reskin essentially, of Aeon's End, which is one of my favorite 2 deck builders in all the world. Probably that and Thunderstone Quest are my 2 favorite sort of conventional deck builders. Yes, I do like them both more than Hero Realms. I think there's more going on. Now, Astro Knights, at least for the time being right now, has a complexity rating on Board Game Geek of 2.6. The original Aeon's End has a 2.79. The way that I look at things, the way I divide things, I have games that are below a 2.55 as medium light and a 2.55 or higher as a medium heavy game, which means that they're both medium heavy games, and Aeon's End is a little bit heavier than Astro Knights. And I think that's true. I would even go so far, and maybe it'll come down in complexity over time, but I would even go so far as to say that Astro Knights is a medium light game. I think the one thing that might be keeping that from being graded that way right now is that there is quite a bit going on component-wise with Astro Knights, and if you know Aeon's End, you'll kind of know how that is. So you've got like a homeworld that you're defending with a health dial. You've got a boss that you're fighting. The boss has an attack deck. A lot of the bosses have an additional attack deck, kind of a special power deck. You've got a health dial for the boss. You've got, and this is different from Aeon's End, but in Astro Knights, you've got 6 different stacks of market cards. And the way that this works is 2 of these decks are fuel cards, which are what you use to buy more cards, also to increase the number of slots that you have for weapons, and to kind of charge up your player ability. So 2 different kinds of fuel cards. One's a little more expensive than the other, but it also is a little more powerful. Then you've got tech cards, which are their own ability cards. So you don't really need anything to trigger the tech cards. They'll just trigger on their own. You buy them, you put them in your deck. When they come up, you can use them. And then you have 3 different stacks of weapon cards. Like the fuel cards, they're different levels, so they get more expensive as you go from deck to deck, and the more expensive ones are more powerful. So at any time, you're going to have 6 of these decks out. You'll have 1 card turned over on the top of each deck, and during your turn, as you know, you're drawing and you've got your fuel cards, you can choose things to buy from the tops of these decks. Then you've got your player mats and the deck building system to deal with. So I think that maybe is a lot for people who are playing it for the first time, just a lot of things to kind of keep track of. The way that the game plays in turn order, I think, is similar to Aeon's End, where you've got turn order cards. So if I'm playing a 2-player game, there's going to be 2 cards for each player and 2 cards for the boss, but they get shuffled every round. So you know that everyone's going to get to attack twice, you just don't know in what order. So it creates a little bit of surprise, and you can't quite plan for things. There's no specific turn order every round. The boss could attack twice right at the top of the round, or the boss could attack twice at the very end of the round. You know, and same with the player turns. It's kind of hard, makes it harder to plan things out specifically. Now, what makes this version, other than the space theme, different from Aeon's End? Well, first of all, there's no portals for your spells. But that's one of the things that I really like about Aeon's End. And I think it adds a little more complexity to Aeon's End, so that makes Astro Knights a little bit simpler, maybe a little bit easier to pick up. Like I said, there is some stuff going around, you know, with the components and things like that, but once you take a look at it, it's really not that complex, which is why I think Astro Knights will eventually slide down on Board Game Geek into the medium light rating zone. And it does feel simpler to me than Aeon's End. So I think maybe for people who haven't played Aeon's End, this is an easier place to start. But because of the thing not having the portals and what I'm about to describe to you, the way that the deck building works, it seems like there are a lot less choices for the player to make. Much of the game seems to play itself. Now, keep in mind, I've played 1 game, and I played, the starting characters and the starting boss and the starting world. So it's possible that as I get deeper into the game and play some of the other monsters, there will be cards and mechanics that allow you deeper strategy. But for right now, from what I'm seeing of the game, it doesn't feel like it's designed for that. It feels like it's designed more for people who haven't played Aeon's End, maybe are a little bit overwhelmed by Aeon's End, and want a simpler version of the game. So Here's how the deck building works in this one. You're going to have a starting hand, and it's kind of determined what order the cards are in. And then you'll have a starting deck. So in your second turn, you'll get the starting deck, and that'll be your second hand. Now, how this works is that you, at the top of every round, if you already have weapons equipped, you can use those weapons. So at the start of the game, you don't have weapons equipped. You won't be able to use weapons in that very first turn. But the first thing you'll do in your turn is any weapons in your hand, you'll be able to put down in your tableau, and then those weapons will trigger in the following turn. Now, you'll start with 1 slot. Most characters can upgrade to 4 slots. So you'll need to upgrade the slots if you want to be able to put down more than 1 weapon. That's kind of like self-explanatory, I think. You probably want to get a second slot, upgraded pretty quickly, and then you'll just need to upgrade more slots if you feel the need for them as you acquire more weapon cards. I mean, you'll be buying the weapon cards, so you'll know if you have them and if you need to upgrade more slots. So the first thing that you're doing is you're putting down the weapon cards, and then you'll be left with the fuel cards. And the fuel cards will allow you to buy something from the market. If you have weapons that triggered from a previous round, those will happen at the very top, so those will immediately go into your discard. Those will be the first thing in your discard. Then you'll do your fuel card thing where you'll either upgrade your slots if you want to do that. You can start to power up your big character ability, which takes a lot of fuel. So it's something that you would take, even if you were just only focused on powering up that ability, it would take several turns spending fuel on that over several turns to power that up, which means I think for most people in the game, they're only going to be able to use that ability 2 times, maybe 3. And if they're able to get off any more than that, they're probably not buying cards really at all. So really the only choice in the game is how much fuel you're putting into powering up that player ability, and then how much fuel you're using to buy cards. So when you buy cards, those will immediately go into your discard. So they'll go on top of any weapons that triggered at the start of the turn. So the weapons go down first, the purchase cards go down second, and then lastly, you'll take the fuel cards or any tech cards that you had in your hand that you used during that round, and those will go down last. So there's no shuffling involved, and when your draw pile runs out, you're just going to take your discard pile, flip it over, and then you'll draw off the top. So a lot of that order is predetermined. The weapons are always going to be at the bottom. Any cards that you bought are going to be next in line. And then the only choice that you have there is to determine, of the fuel and the tech cards, what order you discard those in. So you're probably going to want to discard the tech cards first, so that way that'll come up first when soonest when you draw it. If you have more powerful fuel cards, again, you'll want to put those on the bottom of what you're discarding, so that when you flip it out over and draw, you'll get the more powerful fuel cards next. But there's no shuffling. So really your only decision making is, do I upgrade my slots? Do I start to charge up my player ability, or do I use that fuel to buy cards, and which cards? And a lot of times especially in the beginning of the game, you're going to have 2 fuel, 3 fuel, maybe later 4, 5, 6 fuel in a turn. And so what you can buy from the supply decks will be very limited. You only have 1 or 2 choices. Overall, this feels to me like there's not a lot of decision making happening. A lot of what you can do and what you're going to do is very determined by the cards that you draw, and it's almost on rails. And that will continue as the game goes on. Even as you buy cards, what you can do each turn, each round, is going to be very much determined by just the cards that you get. And then the discard is so determined, like so much of it is dictated by the rules, that there's not a lot of choice in that, which makes it feel like the game plays itself a lot. Now, I think because it comes with 5 different bosses, I think 6 or 7 different homeworlds, and then maybe like 7 or 8 different characters, there's some variability, and you can mix and match things. You can play it a bunch. And if you've never played Aeon's End, I think you could sit down with this and have a good time. And for a lighter game where you're not looking for heavy strategy, maybe not having that much player agency in what you can do or how you can do things, maybe it won't matter. And in that sense, I think, yeah, you could sit down and have a fun time with this game. And I think someone who's looking at it like that might rate this maybe somewhere in the 7s, maybe in the low 8s if they're being really generous. But I think when we're looking at this as sort of a reskin of Aeon's End, which has more compelling mechanics with more player choice and has already existed to the point that they have all these expansions, which have added in more and more things to the game. Plus it has 2 legacy versions out there. To me, that's the version of the game that you want to be playing. Unless you want this very simple, very scaled back version of this. I think also when you compare it to Aeon's End and everything that's out there, and the fact that that game, in my opinion, is superior mechanically, and in terms of the breadth of player choices that it gives you, it makes me want to ding down the score on this. Because it really does feel like Astro Knights is on rails. I am going to generously give Astro Knights a 7.0 right now, but I'm going to be playing this more with Kristen. I'll play the different characters, the bosses, I'll protect the different homeworlds, and I'll come back. And I think if it opens up the mechanics and I find that there are more choices, then I will, stay strong with the 7.0. Maybe I'll even feel like I upgraded to a 7.5. But if what I'm feeling about the game right now, in terms of player choice being very limited, I think when I come back and rate the game again in future weeks, that score will go down to a 6.5 or even lower, or 6.0. I do like the game. I think it's compelling. I like the card art, and I love Aeon's End. So this is, it has the Aeon's End feeling, it has that Barton Fink feeling. And so I don't want to, rate it too low. It's still got the core of a good game behind it. But I think 6.5 is probably where I'm going to end up landing on this. I'm just being a little bit generous and giving it a 7.0 right now until I see more of it. And if my suspicions are confirmed, it'll probably end up being a 6.5. The only other thing that I would sort of criticize the game about, it's got a nice player mat, but the overall production of the game doesn't feel that high to me. It's kind of a smaller box. The enemies and the player mats feel kind of thin. The player mats have information on the back of it that tells you your starting hand information and your starting deck information. But the player mats themselves are going to have 3 different little markers that go on it. So if you start to set up the game, maybe especially when you're learning it, maybe you do something a little bit wrong, so you need to reset the game. Then if you want to see what your starting deck and starting hand is, you actually have to take the markers off, flip the mat over to the back, look at that, and then kind of put everything back together, which is just a little fiddly. It's not a huge thing, but also the mats are kind of thin. And so even though they've got a little cutout, so it's technically, it's not really a dual layer player board because there's just a cutout in the board. So it's technically a single layer player board with a cutout in the middle. It's not really thick enough to do a really good job of holding the markers in place. They'll kind of stay in place, but if the table gets bumped hard enough, they could fall over or shift around. I think they probably should have used a thicker cardboard, especially for the player mats. Maybe for the boss mat just to be consistent, but definitely for the player mat. There was also an accessory pack that came with this, like when you pledge the higher level. I think it's probably available as an add-on for probably $10 or something. And the accessory pack comes with a lot of dice, 10-sided dice. And I was trying to figure out what the dice are for because it's not really evident in the game. The dice are there just to be dice counters, which doesn't really make sense to me because the game, even the low level, the basic version of the game comes with health dials. And dice counters were more used in games when you were getting a bare bones version without health dials. Usually when a game was first produced, they would just give you dice for dice counters. And then later they would do another version of the game, a later edition, they'd Kickstarter it again, they'd put health dials in. That's what they just did with Hero Realms. You used to have the system where you'd kind of put cards on top of each other to mark your health. And with this latest version of Hero Realms, the one that was like the 3rd or 4th or 5th Kickstarter, they just did health dials. So it kind of makes dice counters or card counters obsolete at that point. So it was weird to me that they put in dice counters in an accessory pack when you've already got health dials in the game. If you really like dice counters, hey, now you've got them, you can use them. But that was really the majority of the accessory pack. Other than that, there were kind of extra promo cards. So I think you maybe got an extra homeworld and then a dozen or less cards to go in the various decks. So it just didn't feel like instead of being an accessory pack, it should have just been a promo pack, and maybe a $5 promo pack instead of a $10 accessory pack with dice that you don't really need. So overall, for me, Astro Knights was a little bit of a miss. And I think that this is something that I'll play through with Kristen. I'll probably try to fight each monster once and defend each homeworld once and play each character once. But considering that I already have everything for Aeon's End, and I think is the superior game with better mechanics, anytime I spend kind of dinking around with Astro Knights, it's just going to end up being time that I don't play Aeon's End, or I don't get to that better Aeon's End content. So my guess is I'll probably just power through Astro Knights to kind of quickly see everything it has to offer and then just sell it off. But I will update this score as I play it more in the next couple weeks, and we'll find out where I finally settle on it. I played Beyond the Sun one time this period. I'm continuing to rate that game an 8.5, but I know I'm going to be playing it more, and I feel like that score is on the move. I just don't know whether it's going up or down yet. I haven't decided yet what I think about the strategic choices in the game. So for now, that 8.5 is remaining a consistent score with weeks past. But I think the next time I talk about it, it's probably going to move one way or the other. I've also played Caper Europe 2 more times, and I'm continuing to rate that game an 8.0. I feel like that score is very solidly locked in for me now. I'm also continuing to rate Carnegie, which I played 1 more time, at a 9.0, and I feel like that score is pretty well locked in for me as well. The Castles of Burgundy I've played once more, continuing to rate that one a 9.0, and I've played Earth 1 more time, and I think I'm actually increasing my score on Earth to an 8.5. I really like Earth a lot. It's very fiddly in the UI, but the UI also, I think, works really well and gives you a lot of information so that you can play it at a very high level, which I like. I'm curious to play it physically in person at some point. You won't have all of that information if you're playing it physically. You won't have everything that every player is doing with their tableau. It's just too much information to track unless you're walking around and kind of hovering over people and taking notes. So it will play differently, I think, physically in person. And I think I will like both experiences with the game. So for me, I'm just increasing my rating on Earth to an 8.5. And we'll see where that goes over time. Great Western Trail, I've played 1 more time, and I'm staying consistent for now with my rating of Great Western Trail, which is an 8.0, which is admittedly kind of low for what most people would rate it. I used to really like Great Western Trail. I kind of didn't play it for a while. I'm getting back into it now, and I'm having a little trouble, doing well or doing much with it. I am starting to get a little bit better the more I play it. So I also think that my score for Great Western Trail may be on the move, and we'll see where that goes in coming weeks. It's at an 8.0 now, and I think if I continue to kind of do better in my strategizing and unlocking some of the game, taking it to the next level, it's possible my score could go up in future weeks. I'm actually trying to play fewer games on Board Game Arena right now because I need to spend more time playing physical games and doing this work. I, however, made the mistake of signing up for a few tournaments, and I wasn't paying too much attention to some of these tournaments. I signed up for a few of them specifically for Isle of Cats and Wingspan, and they all launched at the same time, like 2 or 3 tournaments for each one. And each of them had simultaneous games, like 7 or 8 games apiece. So all of a sudden, in like 1 or 2 days time, I had, 20 to 25 games of Wingspan and 20 to 25 games of Isle of Cats launch. So in this period, I have completed 7 more games of the Isle of Cats. I'm continuing to rate this one in 8.0. And I will say the one thing that is really interesting when you're playing that many games of something, you can't really track game to game. Like, you lose the ability to know what you're doing strategizing in individual games. You can write notes, you can leave notes for yourself in Board Game Arena, but when you're playing that many games, they all start to run together. I mean, sometimes tableaus that you're building, or the way that you're placing your cat tiles and Isle of Cats, can be similar in a lot of different games. So what is interesting about that is it takes away, I think, the ability for you to kind of long-term strategize like you can in a game when you're just sitting down and playing it all the way through. Certainly when you have 20 different games going simultaneously, it makes you feel like one of those guys in Central Park who goes around playing chess against like 10 different people and just moving down the line and making all of their moves. But what you gain from that is that you start to see like larger patterns. If you make little like erroneous choices or things here and there, it's not going to really click through. But if you, in a larger pattern kind of way, start doing the same move a bunch of times and trying things out different ways, that will come back to you as kind of a wide swath in terms of like, this really works or this really doesn't work. And so it's a really good kind of scientific experiment in terms of like larger strategies and what works within games and what doesn't. And when you're playing that many games simultaneously, you get this, it's like this huge experiment with like, I guess not control groups, but you're kind of seeing all these things happen at once. And I find that when I do this, when I play tournaments where I'm playing a bunch of games at once, I get really good at the game. I learn how to make isolated, moves because I'm thinking very much from turn to turn. And so I learn the best possible strategies within that kind of like turn to turn thing, and also breaking things down into rounds. So doing this while, I don't know, if you were neurodivergent in some ways, it might make you freak out to have this many things to be managing at the same time. If you can kind of just chill and go with it and play all of this stuff simultaneously, you do learn a lot about the game from a strategy point of view and what works and what doesn't in a bigger sense. And I think playing games that way and playing tournaments in that way does make me a very good player at those games once I come out the other side. So I did that for Lost Ruins of Arnak, and I feel like with Wingspan and Isle of Cats, my game is improving in big ways. Like I'm becoming a pretty competitive player in these two games. I've played a couple more games of Kingdom Builder. I'm continuing to rate that one at a 6.5, and I don't have too much more to say about Kingdom Builder. I think what I've said in the past is consistent with what I think, which is that it is a very simple game. It looks very simple. There is some strategy involved with it, but you need to really know what you're doing strategy-wise in your opening move or two. And if you don't do a really good opening move or two, then your whole game can fall apart. And also with Kingdom Builder, a lot of it is determined by just what cards you draw, because that will determine where you build. So there is a high amount of randomization in Kingdom Builder, and a lot of playing it well is knowing how to manage that randomization and how to move your settlements around to plan for things that you may or may not get, so that you have more choices or you're not backed into a corner. Because if you are not playing Kingdom Builder at a fairly high level, all of your choices will be made for you by your card draws, and you'll have to build what the cards tell you to build, and you will not be able to employ much strategy. So while it looks very simple and very beginner friendly, if you want to do fairly well at Kingdom Builder, you have to really play well and know what you're doing and play like a shark from your very opening move. Lost Ruins of Arnak, I've played 2 more times. I'm continuing to rate this one at a 9.0. I've been very consistent with that rating for weeks, although I did look at a video that I put out. I believe it was maybe the video for January 23rd to February 5th. And I noticed in that video that I had written the score for Lost Ruins of Arnak at an 8.0. I think that was a typo. I think if you watch that video, I say that I'm rating it a 9.0, and I've been very consistent for weeks now with Lost Ruins of Arnak scoring a 9.0 from me. But I noticed when I was looking to see what I'd rated other games that I'm talking about in this video, what I'd rated them previously, I noticed that the score that came up visually on the screen was an 8.0 for Lost Ruins of Arnak. So if for some reason you saw that video and you're thinking that I rated Lost Ruins of Arnak an 8.0, just know that's wrong. I have been rating Lost Ruins of Arnak a 9.0 for quite some time, and that is my rating for the game. And there was I think a typo in the visuals. I played Luxor one more time, continuing to rate that one a 6.5. I kind of like the choices in that game. It's a very simple game, and it's a game I think I'll come back to, maybe play a tournament every once in a long while, but it's a little simple for my taste, and it's just, I don't think it's a game that I'm ever going to reach for, and it's not a game that I probably would play other than on Board Game Arena, where it can kind of serve its purpose as a fun, simple game with some light and easy choices that I can play when I want something fairly relaxing. Patchwork is another game that I've been playing a lot of lately. This one because I'm trying to do well in the arena. I've played this one 7 more times. I'm rating it an 8.0. I think that score is pretty consistent now. A lot of what you can do in Patchwork is boxed in, but when you play at a high level, you can find some strategy there. I got to a point where I had gotten really high in the gold arena, almost to the platinum arena, and then I lost a few games in a row, and I went back to the bottom of the gold arena. So I don't want to waste a lot of time playing Patchwork. I think for my own sake, I'm just trying to make it to the platinum arena once, and so I'm probably going to push that agenda. I think I have until April for this season. So I'll probably keep playing Patchwork, trying to get to the platinum, and then I'll probably stop. But if I find that I'm spinning my wheels and I lose as much as I win in the gold arena, I'll probably just stop anyway. I do enjoy Patchwork, and I think what makes Patchwork so much fun to play is just that it's quick and easy. It's not something that you have to, if you're playing a turn-based game, when you come back to it, you're not trying to look at what you were doing and find out what your strategy is, especially if no one's played a move in several days. It doesn't take a lot to figure out what you were doing. And generally, because it plays quick like Caper Europe, even when people play turn-based games, they go fairly quickly. So it's just a fairly light, easy, simple game that has, good little strategic choices, and it's just easy to play it. It's a game that I think once I kind of find out where my place is in the arena, whether that's going to be gold or platinum, I probably will start playing a lot less. I'm chasing that dragon right now just to see how far I can go. Seasons, I've played 4 more times. This game I really like. This is a game I don't think I'll ever get tired of playing. I'll probably always play the arena for this one. Again, it's a game that's fairly kind of easy to play and simple to play and quick to play, but there's a lot of variability in Seasons with the cards that you're drafting and kind of how you're using them together and the dice that you get. So Patchwork, when you play it a lot, it's the same tiles in the game every time, so it starts to feel very samey. And if you're good at it, it's probably because you're really familiar with it, and you get to be a shark with what you're doing. Like you know everything. There's more variability in Seasons, which for me is more fun. So I've played 4 more games of that, and I'm continuing to rate Seasons a 9.0. I've played Terra Mystica 3 more times. This is a game that I hadn't played for a long time. I'm getting my feet wet. It's a great Euro game. There's a lot of strategy. It's very tight. Things that you do early on affect your ability to do well later. It's a game that can go off the rails very quickly and very easily. There's a lot of player interaction and how players are kind of building their settlements and things like that. So something that a player does can really affect your ability to do well in the game, especially when that action may come. And there are a lot of different factions with variable player powers, so there's a lot to explore in the game. I'm really enjoying it. It's a game that I think I'll probably be playing, in like tournaments and arenas for a long time to come. My only problem with Terra Mystica, though, is that if you're playing with people who are taking really slow turns, the games can be long and they can kind of drag on. So it's not a game like Patchwork or Seasons or Caper Europe that you're just going to be able to blow through. It really is going to depend on the other players and how quickly they're playing. But I really like it. There's a lot of strategy involved, and it's one of those games, I think the more you play it, the more strategy opens up. And because there's a lot of depth in the player powers and things like that, you find things the more you play the game. You find ways to be more efficient, and you find things that are kind of high level that are, I don't want to say sneaky, but make use of your experience. So this is definitely a game that will reward players that have a lot of experience with it and players that have a lot of experience will just absolutely slaughter somebody who comes in who's just kind of figuring out the game for the first time. But if you like that kind of game, it is rewarding over the long haul, and there's a lot of room for that game to open up for you. The last game is Wingspan. I played this one 11 times. This, like Isle of Cats, I am sort of embroiled in multiple tournaments with lots of games. I'm continuing to rate Wingspan an 8.5. I've talked in the past about the one thing that is problematic a little bit with Wingspan is the randomization of cards and the fact that you can be chasing certain things that you want and just not getting it. But the more that I'm playing it, the more I'm finding kind of high-level strategies of how to not only mitigate that, but work around it. And that's been really fun for me when I'm playing this many games to kind of make those discoveries. And I'm doing pretty well as I go. So I enjoy learning, and I enjoy learning higher levels of strategy. That's always really fun for me, which is why I tend to like more complex games. Now, once these tournaments end, and I'm spending less time on Board Game Arena, I am planning now doing more physical plays, and as I kind of get things going behind the scenes, I'm going to be doing more teach and reviews and doing more live streaming of games. I do know that I have several things planned for physical games in the future, so games that you'll be hearing me talk about in coming weeks will probably include more Astro Knights. Kristen and I are also planning on playing Fog of Love soon, Stardew Valley the board game, and Valeria Card Kingdoms. We've got a whole stack of games, which are games that I think that she's really going to like, so we're going to be moving our way through those, but those are probably the first 4 games that we're going to be really digging into. Now, I have a friend who's a heavier gamer. She is in the process of moving. Once she has moved, we want to get back together and start playing games again soon. And I know the 2 games that we have at the top of our list are Arc Nova and Lacrimosa. So those are also probably games I will be talking about having played in the coming weeks. And then I have a heavy game group. We've been on hiatus for the past few months. There's just been a lot going on in our personal lives. One of the players is switching jobs and moving. So we are planning on meeting back up in March. And I know that one of the games that we'll be playing in that game session is Tiletum. I know the other game that we're going to be playing is either Mosaic: A Story of Civilization, Terracotta Army, or Woodcraft. So those are games that I'll also be talking about in March. So that gives you a little bit look at what's going to be coming to the played game section, especially as I move away from just playing a lot of the same stuff in Board Game Arena. In next week's video, I know I'll be looking at the Search for Lost Species as well as Stone Saga, and there are 2 other games I may be including. I haven't decided yet. One is Alinthia, and the second one is actually a campaign of 4 different games. This is from BoardGameTables.com, which is in the process of rebranding. They're now calling themselves All Play. If you look on Kickstarter, they're still using BoardGameTables.com, as the entity behind, the publisher of their campaigns. I don't know if they're going to be able to change that name, so you may see it both places, but now if you go to Board Game Geek, for instance, they're calling themselves All Play. So All Play is BoardGameTables.com, and they have a campaign that's currently running for 4 games: Chomp, Sail, Kucher, and Mindspace. And so I may be including that one, as well as Alinthia. I haven't decided on those 2. So I think next week I'll either be covering 2 campaigns or up to 4 campaigns. I think it's unlikely that there'll be anything else new that launches that would then be funding that quickly. So somewhere between 2 and 4 campaigns in next week's video. In the meantime, have a great week. I hope you get to play lots of great games. Take care, and come back next weekend and join me for another Kickstarter Weekly. I'll see you soon.